The last thing Emily Carter expected to hear during her night shift was an old man whispering, "I'm sorry I couldn't find you sooner." She thought the medication was making him confused. She smiled gently, adjusted his blanket, and continued reading the worn copy of The Old Man and the Sea resting in her hands. The elderly patient slowly closed his eyes. "I always liked your voice," he whispered. Emily laughed softly. "I think you've confused me with someone else." The old man smiled. "No. I've been waiting 32 years to hear it." Emily assumed he was dreaming. She had no idea. Those would become the final meaningful words he would ever speak. St. Matthew's Hospital never truly slept. The emergency room buzzed with constant activity. Doctors hurried through brightly lit hallways. Monitors beeped endlessly. Stretchers rolled across polished floors. Yet on the fourth floor, room 407 always felt strangely peaceful. That room belonged to William Harrison. Officially, he was listed as an 82-year-old retired history teacher. No visitors. No family. No emergency contacts. The nurses often wondered why such a polite man was completely alone. Emily never asked. She believed loneliness deserved kindness, not curiosity. Every evening, after her 12-hour shift officially ended, she stayed another hour. Unpaid. She adjusted William's pillows. Read him classic novels. Sometimes they simply watched the rain together through the window overlooking New York City. Neither of them talked much. Neither of them needed to. Silence between kind people rarely felt uncomfortable. Emily's own life was far from easy. 3 years earlier, her husband, Daniel, had died in a construction accident. One ordinary Tuesday morning, he kissed her goodbye. By lunchtime, police officers were knocking on her apartment door. Their daughter, Lily, had been only 6 years old. Now she was 9. Old enough to understand death. Too young to understand why life could be so unfair. Emily worked double shifts. Sometimes 6 nights in a row. Not because she wanted a bigger house. Not because she dreamed of luxury. She simply wanted her daughter to keep taking piano lessons. And she wanted to pay for her mother's chemotherapy. Every paycheck disappeared almost immediately. Still, patients always saw her smiling. One nurse once asked, "Emily, how do you stay so positive?" Emily answered without looking up from changing a bandage. "My husband used to say, if someone is already having the worst day of their life, don't become another reason they remember it." She never forgot those words. William noticed everything. He noticed how Emily skipped dinner to save money. How she secretly paid for a homeless veteran's medication when insurance refused. How she knitted blankets for newborn babies whose parents couldn't afford them. He watched quietly, never interrupting, never revealing the tears that sometimes filled his own eyes. One rainy evening he finally asked, "Emily, why do you care so much?" She smiled. "My father." "What about him?" "He believed kindness was the only thing people could leave behind after they died." William looked away toward the rain-covered window. "And your father? Is he still alive?" Emily gently shook her head. "He drowned saving a stranger." William froze. His fingers tightened around the blanket. "When?" 32 years ago. His breathing suddenly became uneven. Emily immediately stood. "Are you all right?" William forced a weak smile. "Yes. Just an old memory." She didn't notice. But for the first time since arriving at the hospital, William quietly began to cry. Across town. Inside the 63rd floor of Harrison Global Holdings, a crisis meeting was underway. Around the polished conference table sat three impeccably dressed executives. They weren't discussing markets or acquisitions. They were discussing inheritance. Richard Harrison, the eldest son, impatiently checked his watch. "Has anyone heard from father?" "No." His sister Victoria sighed. He ignored every call again. Youngest brother Ethan smirked. "Probably wasting time with those useless charity people." Richard leaned back confidently. "It doesn't matter. The doctors already said he doesn't have much time." Victoria smiled. "The company will finally have competent leadership." None of them realized. Their father had heard similar conversations for years, and had already made a decision that would change every one of their lives forever. Back at the hospital, Emily tucked the blanket around William one last time before leaving. "I'm off until tomorrow night." William looked at her carefully. "Emily." She turned. "If someone spent 30 years trying to thank your father, what would you tell them?" Emily thought for a moment, then smiled. "I'd tell them, my dad never helped people because he expected something back." William slowly nodded. "I thought you'd say that." She laughed. "Good night, Mr. Harrison." As the door quietly closed, William reached beneath his pillow. He removed an old newspaper clipping. Its edges had turned yellow with age. The headline read, "Local man dies saving stranger from burning car after flood." Below the headline, a faded black and white photograph showed a smiling young man. His name was Michael Carter, Emily's father. William gently touched the photograph, then whispered through tears, "I finally found your little girl." The heart monitor beside his bed suddenly began beeping wildly. Nurses rushed into the room. Doctors followed seconds later. Outside, Emily had just reached the parking lot. Her phone began to ring. She looked at the screen. St. Matthew's Hospital. Something inside her heart sank. She turned around and started running back toward room 407. Emily sprinted through the hospital entrance, barely noticing the rain soaking her uniform. Her heartbeat echoed louder than the ambulance sirens outside. As the elevator crawled toward the 4th floor, she whispered the same sentence over and over. "Please don't let me be too late." The doors finally opened. Doctors and nurses rushed in and out of room 407. Someone was performing CPR. Another adjusted a ventilator. Emily stopped in the doorway. For a brief moment, nobody noticed she was there. William Harrison lay motionless. The calm man who always smiled when she entered the room now looked impossibly fragile. The attending physician shouted, "One more round." The defibrillator charged. "Clear." William's body jerked. "Nothing." Again. "Clear." Still nothing. Emily quietly covered her mouth. She had witnessed death hundreds of times as a nurse. But somehow, this one felt different. 5 minutes later, The physician slowly lowered his head. He looked at the clock. Time of death. The rest of the words disappeared beneath the ringing in Emily's ears. She stood frozen. One of the younger nurses gently touched her shoulder. "I'm sorry." Emily nodded. But she couldn't move. She walked slowly toward the bed. William looked peaceful. Almost as though he had simply fallen asleep. She reached out and held his hand one last time. It was already beginning to grow cold. She smiled through tears. "You never let me finish the last chapter." Silence answered her. Less than 20 minutes later. The quiet hallway transformed into chaos. Black SUVs arrived one after another. Men in dark suits filled the lobby. Hospital security suddenly doubled. Nurses whispered nervously. "What is happening?" A helicopter landed on the hospital roof. Then another. Emily watched in confusion as nearly 30 security officers entered the building. The hospital director himself hurried downstairs. He almost never left his office. Now he looked terrified. A sharply dressed woman approached the front desk. She placed a leather identification wallet on the counter. "I'm Victoria Harrison. I need access to my father's room." The receptionist frowned. "Father?" "The deceased patient in room 407. Emily looked up. "Room 407? William Harrison?" Another man arrived beside Victoria. Expensive Italian suit. Diamond watch. Cold blue eyes. "My name is Richard Harrison. The Harrison family owns Harrison Global Holdings." Emily's eyes widened. The Harrison Global logo appeared on skyscrapers across America. It was one of the largest corporations in the world. Worth over $60 billion. The elderly man who loved classic novels had never been a retired teacher. He had been one of the richest men on earth. Emily stood speechless. One memory after another rushed through her mind. The worn-out sweaters. The simple meals. The way William insisted on drinking coffee from an old ceramic mug instead of expensive cups. None of it made sense anymore. Why would a billionaire pretend to be ordinary? Before she could process the thought, another luxury vehicle stopped outside. A silver-haired man stepped out. Unlike everyone else, he carried no bodyguards. Only a black leather briefcase. His face remained calm. Purposeful. He walked directly toward Emily. "Excuse me." She looked up. "Are you Nurse Emily Carter?" "Yes. My name is Benjamin Lawson. I'm Mr. Harrison's personal attorney." Emily frowned. "I'm very sorry for your loss." Benjamin looked at her carefully. "No," he replied quietly. "I'm sorry for yours." She didn't understand. He continued. "Mr. Harrison left specific instructions. He wanted me to find you immediately." Emily blinked. "Me?" Benjamin nodded. "He said if anything happened, you must attend the reading of his will." Emily stared at him. "There must be some mistake." "There isn't. I barely knew him." Benjamin gave a faint smile. "According to Mr. Harrison, you knew him better than anyone." Across the hallway, Richard Harrison overheard the conversation. He walked over immediately. "What did you just say?" Benjamin answered calmly. Your father requested Nurse Carter's presence. Richard laughed. A nurse? Victoria crossed her arms. This is ridiculous. Benjamin didn't react. I'm simply following Mr. Harrison's legal instructions. Richard stepped closer. My father had dementia. Benjamin looked him directly in the eyes. No. I had him evaluated every month. His mind remained perfectly clear. Richard's expression darkened. He would never invite a stranger to the will reading. Benjamin slowly opened his briefcase. Inside lay a sealed envelope. Across the front, William Harrison's unmistakable handwriting read, To my children. Benjamin held it up. Your father anticipated this conversation. He broke the seal, removed a single handwritten page, and began reading aloud. If my children question why Emily Carter is present, it only proves they still don't understand who I truly was. The hallway fell silent. The woman standing before you gave me something none of you have offered in years. Her time. She expected nothing in return. That alone makes her worthy of hearing my final words. Richard's jaw tightened. Victoria looked away. Even the hospital staff became emotional. Benjamin carefully folded the letter. The official reading will take place tomorrow morning. He handed Emily a cream-colored invitation embossed with a gold seal. I hope you'll come. Emily looked down at the envelope. Her hands trembled. I don't belong there. Benjamin smiled sadly. I believe Mr. Harrison would disagree. That night, Emily couldn't sleep. Lily had already gone to bed. The apartment was quiet. Rain tapped softly against the windows. She opened the invitation again. Inside was another handwritten note. Not from the attorney. From William. Only one sentence. If you truly want to know why I searched for 32 years, please come. Emily's heart skipped a beat. She whispered to herself. Searched. For me? She had no idea that by tomorrow afternoon, the entire country would know her name. And a secret buried for more than 3 decades would finally come to light. The next morning, Emily almost turned the car around 3 different times. She had never driven into Manhattan's financial district before. Towering skyscrapers surrounded her. Luxury cars lined every street. People in tailored suits hurried across sidewalks carrying briefcases worth more than her monthly salary. She looked down at her navy blue dress. It wasn't new. She had bought it 5 years earlier for her husband's funeral. It was the only formal outfit she owned. She whispered to herself, You don't belong here. Yet somehow, she kept walking. The headquarters of Harrison Global Holdings stood like a monument of glass and steel above the city. 74 floors. Thousands of employees. Billions of dollars moved through the building every day. A doorman greeted her with surprising warmth. Good morning, Miss Carter. She looked behind her. Was he speaking to someone else? I'm Emily. Yes, ma'am. We've been expecting you. He opened the enormous bronze doors. Inside, everything shimmered. Italian marble floors. Crystal chandeliers. Massive paintings. Fresh white orchids decorated every corner. Emily felt as though she had stepped into another world. Benjamin Lawson was already waiting. "I'm glad you came." She smiled nervously. "I almost didn't." He nodded. So did William. Emily looked confused. "What do you mean?" Benjamin smiled. "He once told me, if Emily ever discovers who I really am, she'll probably run away." Despite everything. Emily laughed. That sounds exactly like him. The boardroom occupied the top floor. More than 50 people were already seated. Corporate directors, international investors, attorneys, members of the press, representatives from charities. William Harrison's 3 children sat together at the front. Richard, Victoria, Ethan. None of them looked happy. The moment Emily entered, Richard whispered loudly enough for everyone nearby to hear. The nurse actually came. Victoria glanced toward Emily's simple dress. She must think she's getting something. Several people chuckled. Emily quietly lowered her eyes and sat in the last chair near the door. Exactly where she hoped nobody would notice her. Benjamin walked to the center of the room. At precisely 10 o'clock, he began. "Ladies and gentlemen, we are gathered to honor the final wishes of William Harrison." He opened a thick leather folder. William had donated billions to universities, cancer research, veterans, children's hospitals, environmental projects. Every few pages another charitable foundation received hundreds of millions of dollars. Emily smiled. "That sounds like him." Benjamin continued. Victoria inherited several properties in Europe. Ethan received the family's private aviation company. Richard inherited William's personal art collection. Richard leaned back confidently. "So." He smiled. "The company." Benjamin remained silent. Instead, he opened another envelope. This section was handwritten by Mr. Harrison. The room became completely still. Benjamin began reading. "My children, if you are hearing this, then my journey has ended. I hope one day you understand that success without kindness is simply expensive loneliness." Richard rolled his eyes. Benjamin ignored him. "For years, you believed my greatest achievement was building Harrison Global. You were wrong. My greatest achievement was surviving long enough to meet one extraordinary woman." Emily frowned. Surely he couldn't mean Emily Carter. Every head in the room turned toward her. She froze. Benjamin continued. "She believed I was an old retired teacher. She never asked about my money. She never searched my name. She simply treated me as though my life still mattered." Silence filled the room. "She reminded me of another person. A man who once saved my life, without asking who I was." Emily's heartbeat quickened. Benjamin unfolded another page. His voice became softer. 32 years ago, a flood swept my car from a bridge outside Albany. I believed I was going to die. One man jumped into the river. He broke the window, pulled me free, and disappeared beneath the current. Emily slowly covered her mouth. "No." Benjamin continued. "That man was Michael Carter." A collective gasp echoed across the room. Emily's eyes filled with tears. Her father's name. In front of hundreds of strangers. He gave his life. So mine could continue. For 32 years. I searched for his family. Every investigator failed. Every lead disappeared. Until one evening, I heard a nurse quietly humming an old lullaby beside my hospital bed. Emily's body trembled. That lullaby. Her father used to sing it every night. William had recognized it. Benjamin continued reading. When I saw the silver locket around Emily's neck, I knew. Inside that locket, she still carried the photograph of her parents. The same photograph Michael showed me moments before he pushed me toward safety. Emily instinctively touched the small silver locket around her neck. She had worn it every day since childhood. Never realizing someone else remembered it. Victoria suddenly stood. So what? Our father found the rescuer's daughter. That's emotional. But what does it have to do with the company? Benjamin looked toward her calmly. It has everything to do with the company. Richard crossed his arms. Get to the point. Benjamin nodded. There is one final recording. He dimmed the lights. A massive screen descended from the ceiling. William Harrison appeared. Not as the weak patient Emily knew, but dressed in a navy suit. Healthy. Confident. He smiled gently. Emily. If you're watching this, then I wasn't brave enough to tell you the truth in person. His eyes became emotional. I spent 32 years trying to repay a debt. But then I realized something. You don't repay kindness. You pass it forward. He paused. Then looked directly into the camera. And that is why I have made the most important decision of my life. The room held its breath. William smiled one final time. My children expected to inherit my company. They were wrong. My company already has owners. The employees. The shareholders. The customers. So I'm leaving them exactly what they helped build. Richard frowned. What? Benjamin slowly reached for the final sealed envelope. His hands actually trembled. Even after decades as an attorney, he had never read a will like this. He looked at Emily. Then quietly said, Mrs. Carter, I believe your life is about to change forever. Benjamin Lawson held the final envelope in both hands. The room was so quiet that Emily could hear the air conditioning humming above the crystal chandeliers. Richard Harrison stood impatiently. Open it. Benjamin nodded. The following document is the last personal instruction of William Harrison. He carefully unfolded the pages. His voice remained calm. But even he struggled to hide the emotion. To everyone gathered here. Especially to my children. You are expecting me to leave Harrison Global to one person. I won't. Richard smiled with relief. Victoria crossed her arms confidently. Ethan leaned back in his chair. Benjamin continued. No single person should own the work of 80,000 employees. Instead, beginning today, 49% of my personal shares will be transferred into the Harrison Employee Trust. The room erupted in whispers. Benjamin raised his hand for silence. Every employee, from the newest janitor to the oldest executive, will become a shareholder. Gasps echoed through the boardroom. Every year the company's profits will be shared with the people who actually built it. Several executives stared at one another in disbelief. No corporation of this size had ever done anything like it. Benjamin continued. My children will each receive enough wealth to live comfortably for the rest of their lives. If that isn't enough, nothing ever will be. Richard's smile vanished. Benjamin reached the final page. And now, the last request. He looked toward Emily. Emily Carter. I am not giving you billions. Emily quietly lowered her head. She had never expected them. Because I know exactly what you would do. You would spend your life giving them away. A few people smiled softly. William knew her well. Instead, I am asking you to do something far more difficult. Emily slowly looked up. Please become the chairwoman of the Harrison Foundation. It contains $10 billion. Not $1 belongs to you. Every cent belongs to people who have nobody left to help them. Benjamin paused. His voice cracked slightly. Children fighting cancer. Veterans sleeping on sidewalks. Single parents choosing between food and medicine. Nurses paying for patients from their own pockets. Emily's eyes filled with tears. William knew. He had seen everything. I trust you. Because kindness cannot be taught. It can only be recognized. Benjamin folded the document. The Harrison Foundation is now the largest private charitable organization in the United States. He handed Emily another envelope. This one is personal. My instructions were to give it to you only after the will was finished. Emily opened it carefully. Inside, there was only one photograph. A faded picture taken 32 years earlier. A young firefighter stood beside a river. His clothes were soaked. He was smiling despite being exhausted. Beside him, a businessman with a bleeding forehead. William Harrison. Emily's hands began shaking uncontrollably. She had never seen this photograph before. On the back, William had written only one sentence. Because of your father. I watched my grandchildren grow up. Emily finally broke down. For years, she had believed her father's sacrifice disappeared into the river with him. Now she realized. His final act had changed thousands of lives. Had he not saved William? There would have been no Harrison Global. No hospitals. No scholarships. No charities. One ordinary man had unknowingly changed the future. Richard suddenly stood. So that's it? My father gives away everything? Benjamin looked at him calmly. No. He gave away what he could never take with him. Richard laughed bitterly. And what exactly was that? Before Benjamin could answer, Emily slowly stood. Everyone looked toward her. She wiped away her tears. Then quietly said, My father used to tell me something. The room became silent. He said, Money tells people what you can buy. She smiled. Kindness tells people who you are. Nobody spoke. Not even Richard. For the first time, he lowered his eyes. 5 years later, the old hospital looked completely different. A new children's wing stretched across 2 city blocks. Above the entrance stood a simple bronze plaque. It didn't mention billionaires. It didn't mention fortunes. It's simply read. The Michael Carter Children's Center. In honor of the man who saved one life. And unknowingly saved thousands more. Inside. Children laughed. Parents smiled. Treatments were free. No family was ever turned away because they couldn't pay. Emily still worked there. Not because she had to. Because she wanted to. Every Friday evening. She visited room 407. The room had been preserved. Exactly as William had left it. His favorite chair still faced the window. A worn copy of The Old Man and the Sea rested on the bedside table. Emily sat down. Opened the book. And read one chapter aloud. Just like she always had. A young nurse walked past the open door. Mrs. Carter. Emily looked up. Yes? Can I ask you something? Emily smiled. Of course. The young nurse hesitated. Why do you still come here every week? Emily looked toward the empty chair. Then at the photograph of her father beside William's. She smiled through quiet tears. Because people think heroes change the world with one great moment. She gently closed the book. But the truth is, they change it with thousands of small acts of kindness. The young nurse nodded slowly. I hope I can be like that someday. Emily smiled warmly. You already can. Just never walk past someone who needs you. The nurse quietly left. Emily remained by the window as the evening sun painted the city in gold. She looked toward the sky. And whispered. Dad, he never forgot you. A gentle breeze moved the curtain. For a brief moment. It felt like someone was smiling. Not William. Not the billionaire. But the ordinary man. Who had jumped into a river. Without ever asking who he was saving. Sometimes. The greatest fortunes are never counted in dollars. They are measured. In the lives we choose to change. The end. If this story touched your heart, don't forget to like this video, subscribe to Novelithra, and turn on notifications for more unforgettable emotional stories every week.